Hey everyone, just wanted to make a screencastify so you guys can stop, pause, rewind on all the things that we need to cover for Unit 2. Congratulations on Unit 1. Scores were really, really good. And continue working hard. We only have 9 units to cover. And so let's just get to it. So, Unit 2 is on biodiversity. What in the world is that term biodiversity? Well, biodiversity refers to the number of species in a given area. Now, there are different areas that have different quantities of species. The desert, for example, doesn't have a lot of biodiversity. Conversely, the tropical rainforest has a lot of biodiversity, and the coral reef is going to have the most biodiversity per density, per space in the world. So, if we were trying to see which area has the most biodiversity, you could divide that up and say terrestrially, it would be a tropical rainforest, and aquatics, it would be the coral reef ecosystem. So, if we were trying to say which is more important or which one needs more saving, if you will, per space, the rainforest, you'd be hurting a lot more organisms in the rainforest and the coral reef if you allow those to get destroyed, as opposed to, let's say, parts of the desert being destroyed. All right. This refers to a previous unit when we were talking about net primary productivity and gross primary productivity. And so the amount of biomass in the tropical rainforest is ginormous in comparison to the desert, as well as the primary productivity that occurs in the coral reef. Once again, just remember GPP minus NPP equals respiration, or respiration plus NPP is going to give us GPP, which is gross primary productivity, a complex word to simply say the amount of photosynthesis that is going on. Okay. Now, how can you measure biodiversity? There are a couple of buzzwords and terms that you're going to need to know. One of those buzzwords or vocabulary terms, which is in your homework, is species richness. Simply put, species richness is the number of different species. And in this rainforest, we could say palm tree, grass, shrub, and we would go individually and name each one of those species. In this coral reef ecosystem, we would say orange fish, silverfish, anemone, coral. We would basically take those numbers. I've seen this in multiple free response questions where they say in a lake, there's a catfish, a bass, a pike, a snail, and a turtle. There's 5 species richness. It will compare it to another lake, which only has catfish and snails. Which of the two has more species richness? Well, that first one has 5 different species, so that one's going to have more biodiversity than the previous. Okay. Now, you could also associate this with a food chain or a food web. Which one is going to be more resistant to change? Well, one with 5 species is going to be more resistant to change than one with only 2 species. Because if the catfish are eating the snails and the snails are eating the poop of the catfish, if one of them dies, the other one's going to die. But in the other ecosystem, if you had the pike, the bass, the snail, they're all eating each other. If one dies or the numbers decrease, the other ones can kind of still count on each other, right? Now, another thing that you want to measure when you're looking at biodiversity is genetic diversity. That's very important for species. And when species numbers or populations in a species start to decrease, genetic diversity also decreases. What does this mean? Well, let me give you an example. Cheetahs. Cheetahs are endangered. They're going extinct. There's not that many left. And now, during the mating cycle of the cheetah, they don't really necessarily find a suitable mate. Well, they do find a suitable mate, but unfortunately, that suitable mate is usually related to them, either a cousin, a direct cousin, a brother, or a sister, or a father, or a mother. Now, when inbreeding happens in a species like that, it doesn't diversify the genetics. So a lot of the weak genes that may have been hidden or suppressed in the genome have a higher ability of being expressed in the babies. So there are a lot of cheetahs being born with crooked tails, and these tails don't allow them to cut really well. So if they're chasing down a gazelle and they got a short little stubby tail like a bobtail, like a bobcat, when they try to cut, it doesn't act as a counterweight and it doesn't allow them to do that cut. So they're having a harder time to hunt, which then is going to further their their extinction pattern there. I'll give you another quick example. I have an English bulldog, and that dog is not natural. That is extremely artificially selected. In order for artificial selection to occur, there had to be a lot of inbreeding. So puppies were pretty much reproduced with their brothers and sisters so they could stay short, so they could stay heavy, so they can have the wrinkles on the face, and so on and so forth. The end result of Biggles is my English bulldog. This is a lot of problems. The dog will overheat, has to be in the air conditioning. Two, the dog sheds like nonstop. It's ridiculous. He snores very loud. He can overheat. He had 2 eye surgeries. So inbreeding causes a lot of genetic deformalities. It also encourages, let's say, the weak genes to come to the surface. All right. So it's always good to have good mixing of the genes. It's never good to inbreed. And that's why the more successful species are often going to be species that have a wide range of genetic diversity. All right. Okay. So as we're talking about biodiversity, one of these hot topic or one of these organisms that are under attack are the rhinos. Okay. And let's look at this really quick. And rhinos are all endangered species as they become more and more extinct or less and less in their numbers, they become more valuable. And try to think about that. Imagine if someone really found a unicorn. How valuable will that unicorn be? What if someone had it in their head that that unicorn horn was magical and could cure cancer, cure AIDS, cure everything that you could possibly think of? Well, that unicorn is going to be one of the most valuable things in the world. And so people are going to end up hunting it. People are going to end up killing it. And that's a shame. And that is exactly what's happening with the rhino. There's a lot of traditional medicines that think that that rhino horn is magical and medicinal, where it can cure cancer, cure this, cure that. And when people, when all medicines have failed, they'll try anything. So poaching is something that occurs, and poaching is a term used to describe the illegal hunting of certain organisms, like the elephant, like the rhino, like the tiger, like any of these species that may have some medicinal purposes. And so the rhino, unfortunately, is my favorite animal. It's my spirit animal. And they have been under attack, going extinct. I believe 2 years ago, the white rhino just went extinct. There was one left, and then it died. Not through poaching, but it just died of old age. And they didn't have anybody to reproduce it with, so it basically died. But if we look at this data, right, I want you to understand that, okay, everybody believes that rhinos are dying because of poaching. But on our exam, I want you to have that background information, be like, okay, I know what poaching is. I know what's going on with rhinos. But what is this data? What is the data telling you in this? Okay. Now we have a graph here. We have to be able to understand graphs and read them relatively quickly. This is showing us that poaching has increased since, I believe, 2007, all the way. But look what's happening here. The last result, 2016, the poaching has gone down from 2014 to 2016. Now, when I see this, I see a great question. I see a percent change question. What is the percent change of the amount of rhinos that have been poached from 2014 to 2016? Well, hopefully you know the percent change formula. You can pause the camera right now and then try that. Welcome back. If you did that, and if you remember my equation, you would take initial minus final, get the absolute value, put that over the initial, times 100, and then you're just going to add the percent sign. When you add that percent sign, you should get a magical number there. All right. I don't have the calculator on me right now to do, but I would like you guys to do that. And if you don't remember what I just said, pause that camera, rewind it, replay. All right. Percent change is definitely going to be on the exam. You want to do as much practice as you possibly can. Mind you, my formula doesn't tell you directionality, but look, we're going from high number to a low number. So you could say a percent decrease as the answer. Reminder that units and work must be shown on the exam, and if that is not shown, then it will be marked incorrect. All right. So why are organisms under attack? You could remember this term here. It's called HIPCO. All right. And I apologize if this picture is too powerful. I think it's actually a fake picture, but I have seen real pictures online of such a horrible atrocity that occurs here. And anyway, going back to how we're going to remember this. So, how is biodiversity under attack? It's under attack by HIPCO. Okay, say that in your head. HIPCO. Say that in your head. HIPCO. Say that in your head. HIPCO. Okay. And HIPCO is going to be an acronym to try to remember all the reasons why biodiversity is under attack. All right. That first and the largest, the biggest, the main reason why the tigers are going extinct, why the unicorns have gone extinct, why rhinos are going extinct, why elephants in certain regions are going extinct, why certain creatures are going extinct. And that is going to be habitat destruction. Okay. Plain and simple, our population is extending. We need more resources as we start growing and going into different places. Those organisms that need that wide area end up competing with us, and we'll end up killing them or scaring off their food, and they will end up dying themselves as well. Habitat destruction is the largest one. Okay. A second one is going to be something called invasive species. We haven't spoken in detail about invasive species. Hopefully you remembered from bio or environmental science. If you've taken that, you probably haven't though. But invasive species are going to be species from another region, and let's just say a tiger coming to the United States and was just left loose. It doesn't belong in the United States. However, it can live in the United States, and we do have some in zoos. But imagine one loose. How much havoc is that going to create on the ecosystem? Matter of fact, let's say if there were 20 tigers introduced or a pregnant female that now had 10 kittens, and now they're going to literally change that ecosystem. They will eat all the stray dogs, all the stray cats. They'll eat all the wolves if there were any wolves around here. They probably would compete with the black bear and the grizzly bear. It would change the ecosystem, destroying and outcompeting some of the species that are here. So invasive species are going to be a major threat to biodiversity. Another reason would be poaching, like we spoke to before. And poaching, this is an example. They want the horn. They're going to cut the horn, and unfortunately, that organism will die. All right. Pollution. Now, pollution could also be something. I bet you've seen that sad video where you'll see a sea turtle swimming, and you pull a straw out of its nose. It's very, very unfortunate, but some of these things are going to kill some endangered species. And sea turtles are very endangered. All the sea turtles, I believe there's only 7 or 8 species, they're all endangered. A big thing is balloons. And I know we're going to probably graduate this year, but let's try to think of something different than balloons, all right? So don't let those things go, because sea turtles eat jellyfish. And when you let go of a balloon, 70% of our planet is covered with water. Those balloons eventually come down and they end in water, and their strings are going to look like jellyfish. And so I'm sorry if you hear my dog. I don't know what he's doing right now. Those sea turtles eat the balloon, and they end up choking and dying. Can someone check on the dog, please? Excuse me, I'm gonna go check on him. All right, we'll continue here. Sorry, he's okay, everybody, if you were concerned. Another thing that is causing pollution, is causing biodiversity to decrease is climate change. When you think about this, I want you to think about that climate change can affect plant growth. Plant growth is going to affect the things that eat those plants. And so if there's no plants to get the food that something is eating, then the things that do the eating typically are going to start to go extinct. It all is affected. Okay. Climate change could also affect the bug populations. And I'm going to get scared when the earth gets warmer, because those mosquitoes that are stuck next to the equator start to inch closer and closer up to the north. And I'm just so glad that we have a beautiful winter right here, because that winter is going to kill all those bugs, and then, or at least give them a break, and, allow the disease not to spread as far. Okay, so climate change is another one, and overexploitation. We can think of our fisheries as being overexploited, and so that's why the prices of fish or wild caught fish, wild caught salmon, wild caught Chilean sea bass are very expensive because we take too many. And when I say we, it's the United States, but it's other countries as well. And it's hard to manage a global resource like that. Everybody's in for it themselves, and unfortunately, it's the organism that pays the price. Right. So these are the reasons why biodiversity is under attack. Let's continue. Okay. Now, in life, and I want you to watch these videos. We're not going to watch it while I'm here, but in life, certain organisms control a larger portion of the ecosystem than others. All right. We call those very important species keystone species. You don't know what a keystone is. A keystone is going to be, sorry, dog's going crazy. A keystone is going to be if you were building, let's say, a doorway and you were stacking stones and then you had to do the curve up top, the keystone is that last stone that you would put in to allow the pressure to be evenly within the door. If you remove that one keystone, everything will crash down. That in nature is called the trophic cascade. And certain species in nature have shown to be keystone species because when they were removed from the ecosystem, everything crashed. So you could watch these two videos because on the presentation itself, there is these links and you can press on them. Or you could find your own on YouTube. Look up the sea otters and urchins, sea otters and sea urchins. I'll give you a quick snippet. We loved to make hats out of beavers because they have this waterproof fur. And so they were hunted to almost extinction here in the north. And in California, there's a lot of sea urchins as well. Now, the three players in the sea otter story is the sea otter, the sea urchin, and kelp. A sea urchin is like a clam with spikes on it. Thank goodness we don't really have some here on the East Coast. They are on the West Coast, and they are in Ecuador too. Imagine stepping on one of these clams that had spikes all over it. Mm-mm. So anyway, the sea urchins eat kelp. The otters eat sea urchins. Since we destroyed the otter population, the sea urchins over reproduced and started eating all the kelp. Everything depended on the kelp. And so the whole ecosystem collapsed. It caused a trophic cascade, meaning multiple species were affected. Okay? That is the story of the sea otter and the sea urchins. The sea otters were reintroduced. They controlled the sea urchin population. The kelp grew back. The ecosystem came back. The classic story of the wolves of Yellowstone is also a beautiful story. Here in America, we, during the times of werewolves or the werewolf story, the wolves were all over the place. And imagine your kid was hanging out outside and maybe a wolf would have snatched one of those kids up. Imagine you had some farm animals, wolves would come take them. So people didn't really like them here. And so we pretty much hunted and killed all of them to the point of extinction. Okay. Now, wolves also controlled the caribou population here in the north. Without the wolves, the caribou population grew like crazy. I believe it was elk. Elk. The elk started eating everything, all the grass, all the trees. And they ate the trees. The trees couldn't grow back. The trees can't grow back. The grass couldn't grow back. The elk population was growing like crazy. And so when there was no trees and there was no grass, the ecosystem started to collapse and everything that would depend on them, the birds that would depend on the trees, the other organisms in the ecosystem, the rabbits that would eat the grass, the foxes that eat the rabbits, everything was being affected. All right. So then what did we decide to do? This is actually a beautiful classic story, and I'm going to enter a joke here. No offense, please take it. So they got some wolves. They wanted to reintroduce the wolves back into the north, and so they took some Russian wolves, and they took some wolves from Canada, and they took some wolves from India, and they put them all together in Yellowstone National Park. And when they got together, guess what? They didn't speak the same language. Well, kind of, sort of. It's a joke. All right, guess not. Anyhow, they they ended up not liking each other for a little while. They ended up starting to interbreed, and then beautiful story now. Now the wolf population is back to normal. They're controlling the elk population, and they're even causing a problem because they're trying to extend their range out of Yellowstone, and so people are getting scared again and saying no, they got to remain there. So they're doing wolf hunts at this point. Whoa, and it's weird depending on the state that you live in. But anyway, it's an interesting story of the wolves of Yellowstone. Let's continue. All right, we talked about the competitive exclusion principle, and basically, this is another slide. And I guess I'm really highlighting this is because it's perhaps going to be on the Unit 2 questions, and that's most likely why I did this. But this is just another image to drive home that term fundamental and realized niche and competitive exclusion. So no two species can occupy the same niche. One species will win, and basically that's what happens. So if there is an overlap, and this would be species 1 and species 2, if there's an overlap of a niche, over time, they will basically evolve to become different from each other, and they would exist like this. All right, let's do one more slide and call it a day. I don't know if you want me to just stop here because I'm going to blow your mind. Can you guys do me a favor? Go get your helmets because your minds might be blown, and this is what's going to happen right now. Okay, so certain species act as an indicator species. They indicate something. All right, what does that mean? Well, they tell you something. Imagine you came to my house. There was roaches and cockroaches all over the place, and rats and bats when you came into my house. And what would you think? What would you indicate? All right, what you should indicate is perhaps I didn't pay my light bill, and perhaps there's a lot of food scraps, or my house is probably a little dirty, where there's a lot of food on the floor, and the rats are eating that, and the roaches are eating that. You know, I had roaches growing up. They're hard to get rid of. Don't mean you're dirty or anything like that. I'm not trying to offend, but just trying to extend a story. All right. I know it's tough when you live in an apartment and then you try to get rid of the roaches. The roaches come back, and you blame it on the neighbors blame it on you. It's just crazy. Anyhow, it is what it is. All right. Anyhow. So when you see something that indicates something, it tells you something about that ecosystem. Frogs are an indicator species. Since they have a very, let's say, I want to say weak skin. And when I say weak skin, what I'm going to say is that their skin is permeable to water, and it's also sensitive to sunlight. And so wherever you see amphibians, if there was a chemical in the water and now you see a dead amphibian, there's probably a chemical in the water. Let's say if the water was clear or something. If there's too much sunlight, and this is how we indicated that ozone was becoming a problem, like the ozone layer, because too much sunlight would kill a frog or an amphibian as well. Well, anyhow, and another interesting thing about amphibians is that they had their eggs in water. That's what makes an amphibian an amphibian. Since their eggs are in water and their eggs are permeable to chemicals, they are a great indicator species. All right. Now, one thing that's happening to frogs is that since they're in freshwater streams, these freshwater streams are typically in locations that are downstream from a farm, and the number one herbicide in America is atrazine. You can say that in your head. Atrazine. And atrazine is an herbicide. That means it is used as a type of pesticide to get rid of unwanted plants. Well, atrazine, there was a guy from UCLA, and he had done this study, and he has seen that this atrazine is also known as an endocrine disruptor. Endocrine disruptor. What does that mean? It disrupts the endocrine system. If you don't remember what the endocrine system is from biology, it is your hormones, it is your glands. Okay, and so what he found was that the atrazine was actually suppressing male hormone, encouraging female hormone, and male frogs were becoming feminized, either growing no hemipenes, I believe is the term, which is equivalent to a penis in a human, or multiple hemipenes, or having both female and male parts, having no male parts. There were all these different types of developmental issues that were going on with frogs. So it's kind of crazy, and it's things that make you go, okay, because you definitely don't want the world to be giving these chemicals that may affect development of species. Okay, and of course, we're just going to highlight that term, bioaccumulation and biomagnification, to see over a lifetime, could these affect us? So something to think about, and we'll end today's lecture. You guys are an excellent audience, and I'll talk to you later.